Hi everyone, I'm Kevin, and this is HFX by Bike, a channel all about getting around Halifax by bike. Except sometimes it's about why you can't find a parking spot for your car downtown. Every way of getting around takes up space. Cars, transit, cycling, and walking all benefit from having dedicated rights of way, and to varying degrees are all competing for the same space. Aside from the base infrastructure to get around, cars have another thing they need to function that the other means of transport mostly sidestep: parking. There's a widespread belief that downtown Halifax is in the middle of a parking shortage. The issue, and why I'm talking about it on this channel about bikes, is that the perceived lack of parking has a tendency to become everyone else's problem, even if you don't own a car. Both bike and bus lanes are subject to delays, scalebacks, and cancellations because where will people park? Pedestrian streets and loading zones are blocked by illegally parked cars, and apparently people even duke it out over parking spaces. In today's video, I'm going to try to figure out whether there's a parking shortage in Halifax and what might be causing it. To figure out if there's a parking shortage in this city, I went for an early afternoon trip to see if I could find somewhere to park downtown. And it was actually pretty easy. Every parking area I visited had a significant number of empty spaces, ranging from half-filled parkades at the library and Metro Park on Hollis, the Paramount, Doyle, and Spring Garden Place. Some were mostly empty, like the new parkade on Summer Street, and Scotia Square had over 650 empty parking spots just on its own. There were a couple of places that were closer to full capacity: the Dalhousie permit parking lot on Queen Street and the Victoria General parking lot. But these lots discount the rate of parking by 95% and 50% respectively compared to anything in the surrounding neighborhoods, so it's not surprising that they're popular. Maybe people are talking about street parking when they say they can't find a spot. The city gives live data on street parking availability as a service for drivers. At its busiest, the occupancy sat at 47% in the Spring Garden area, 70% in the hospitals and universities, and 83% in the downtown core. I checked again a week later and got essentially the same numbers. Some streets were full, but there were always spots available nearby. So if there are hundreds or even thousands of open parking spaces within blocks of any given part of downtown in the middle of a workday, why can't people find parking? Any given parking spot can be thought of as an overlap between three things: availability, convenience, and cost. All of these exist on a continuum, but availability is just the idea that the space is available to use. Convenience is how close the spot is to your destination, and cost is just how much you have to pay to use it. You can have each of these to varying degrees, but the parking spot that everyone really wants, the holy grail of car storage, is a spot that's free, directly in front of your destination, and available for your personal use whenever you want it. And the second more than a handful of people want to drive to the same place, this completely falls apart. Here's a sketch of a typical suburban street. I'll add in some parked cars in red. Everyone on the street has perfect parking for their own home. It's convenient, free to use, and always available. And it can only be all of those things at once, for the simple reason that besides the people who live on the street, no one wants to be here. Downtown is the opposite. Every day, tens of thousands of people make their way from other parts of the city to work or enjoy some kind of entertainment downtown. A noticeable challenge is that all of these trips are happening around the same time and often have the same handful of destination neighborhoods. Here's a downtown block as an example. I'll pick the smallest business, which happens to be a yoga studio with a maximum class size of 35. The most convenient parking for this destination is on the street directly across from the front door. According to the city's parking app, there are a total of 15 spaces available for 35 clients. There are another 14 spaces about a block up the street for a total of 29. To put it another way, the smallest business in the neighborhood uses up an entire block worth of the most convenient parking, and then some. And every building in the neighborhood draws in dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of people to the area at any given time. This is the fundamental geometry problem of car parking. For any popular destination, the space needed to store the cars will always exhaust any free, convenient space available, and leave only less convenient or more expensive spaces. You might think that this can be addressed just by adding more spaces, but as my trip around downtown and the city's data shows, there's already thousands of empty spots at any given time. That aside, multi-level parking is very expensive to build. The recently opened parkade on Summer Street cost $29 million to build and generates 500 new parking spaces, or $58,000 per parking space. To recoup the costs just of building and acquiring the land, every space needs to be occupied every hour of every day for 11 years non-stop. Cars take up a lot of space, and they're very expensive to store, and there's not a good way around that. Whenever a place is popular with drivers, the Venn diagram of parking shifts from honing in on the perfect parking spot to more of a compromise. Convenient, cheap, or available. You can only pick two. This might mean parking further away from your destination and walking or taking transit the rest of the way. Or you can likely find a space that's convenient, but which you have to pay for. This could be metered on-street parking or a parkade. If you depend on parking being available at your destination, that probably sounds unfair. But think of it this way. A regulation parking spot on the peninsula is 9 by 20 feet, or 180 square feet in size. Demanding free, convenient, on-demand parking at whatever destination you want is akin to asking for one or more small apartments downtown at no cost. Because of the geometry problem, everyone having as much space as they want for free car storage is transparently unworkable. So, is there a way to fix this? Kind of. There are some public policy options that I'll go over in a future video, but the biggest thing that needs to change is how we think about parking. At an individual level, recognize that not being able to find a parking space is a choice. When you're downtown, you're at all times surrounded by hundreds of open spaces, and not being able to find parking comes down to not looking for parking so much as trying to find a winning lottery ticket shaped like a parking space. The geometry problem of car parking isn't created by bike or transit lanes. It's an inherent limitation of trying to store a 3-ton object a third of the size of a small apartment on some of the most valuable land east of Montreal. It only gets exacerbated by expecting this to be free. The more people that bike or take transit to or through the downtown of the city, the more parking spaces remain open for drivers to use. Using parking as a justification to limit other modes of transport is ultimately self-defeating for everyone, but especially for drivers looking for somewhere to park downtown. If you'd like to learn more about parking and how cities mismanage it, I highly recommend checking out The High Cost of Free Parking by UCLA urban planning professor Donald Shute. That's all I've got for this week. As always, thanks for watching, and see you next time.